COVID-19 has been awful. People have lost their lives, people have been sick, been isolated, lost their jobs and economic security. And this is on the back of some of the worst bushfires in living memory. And now with COVID, we've got face masks, we've got social distancing, closed borders, and lockdowns, and thinking of everyone in lockdown right now. COVID has been a nightmare, but not for everyone. Here's some quotes on the screen from people in Australia talking about during COVID. Less stress and anxiety. It made everything better. I felt human again. Not really your average COVID experience. Who are these people, you might be wondering? Are they the millionaires and billionaires that are able to continue to fly around the place, even to outer space, while the rest of us are locked down? Don't blame me for thinking that, because in Australia, the wealth of billionaires has increased by 50% in the last 12 months. But no, it's not them. I'm going to tell you a different story about something that happened in lockdown number 1 in last year. Imagine for a moment, you're a single parent with 2 kids, and it's hard to hold down any decent job because it often doesn't fit around your kids' needs or the school pickups when they get sick. It's really, really hard. And social security payments put you under the poverty line because it hasn't been increased in real terms since 1994. That is the year when the Hyundai Excel X3 model was released and Christopher Skase was arrested ages ago. And so here you are, struggling along, struggling making ends meet, and COVID hits. And all of a sudden, your mutual obligations, you know, those work for the dole requirements and the mandatory job applications every month, they get suspended and you get an extra $550 a fortnight. Your life changes. For example, I bought comfortable shoes and no longer had to wear thongs for the whole winter. I didn't have to ration my baby's milk. The government did something unthinkable when lockdown number 1 hit. It implemented a basic income. You heard me right, a basic income. It was a regular payment, enough to meet basic needs with no mutual obligations. This is the government that forever has been going on for about debt and deficit. But basically overnight, it found cash, a lot of it. And it implemented a massive wage subsidy program, so a lot of people got to keep their jobs, free childcare, and a basic income for people on social security. Not for everybody. Some people missed out, but for a lot of people. And people's lives changed. They went from struggling on $40 a day to being able to make ends meet. Sure, it wasn't a universal basic income, but it was a regular payment with no mutual obligations. And basic income's quite a hot topic. Everybody likes to talk about it. But we never, or very rarely, especially in Australia, get to see it in practice. And that's why when these measures came in, colleagues and I conducted a research project where we were asking people about the impacts of the basic income. And I'm showing with you on the quotes on the screen what people said in their own words. It made a massive difference in people's lives. And it's not just our research that was finding this either. The researchers here at the ANU found that people on payments, poverty levels went from 67% to 7%. Wow, what a drop. The people working in this space, tirelessly working in this space, could probably just dream of such a drop which just happened with a change of policy. You might be thinking, yeah, but surely there's a downside. Surely it's just not that straightforward. But maybe old thinking needs updating. For example, we've been told for a long time about all these stereotypes of people who find themselves unemployed, all these stereotypes that get weaponized against people. Things about, being lazy and that you need to use mutual obligations to compel people into work, or that you can't just give people cash because, they'll waste it. But our research showed something different, that people who got the basic income were able to afford basic needs. For example, I was able to afford new glasses and a maths tutor, or a tutor for my son. And people use this payment for basic needs. Things like medicine, food, paying rent. And it wasn't just us either. The Australian Bureau of Statistics were also tracking what people were using money for, and also found that they were using it on basic needs: groceries, rent, medicine. And how about that story of people worried about people being lazy and they need to be compelled into work, that Social Security payments need to be low and hostile enough to push people into work. This was a problem that the Prime Minister last year was worried about. And in a radio interview last year, he was talking about this basic income and worried that it would become an impediment to work. But he was wrong. People in our research talked about how this payment, this basic income, really helped them being able to look for work and to get ready for it. More time to live properly and actually look for work. And also this. Instead of doing busy ticking off boxes, I could really focus on study and where I wanted to go. And these people, not necessarily new to Social Security either. A lot of these people had been receiving payments for 5 years and even over in some cases. People who are accused of being welfare dependent. But, our research, but also others' research was also pointing to that these payments were not an impediment for people finding work. Leading economists were showing this. More recent research has just come out showing that Australian mutual obligation programs actually make it longer for people to find employment. And that's because unemployment is structural. It's not a choice. There's just simply not enough jobs. So it doesn't matter how many forms you fill in and how many trainings you attend. If there's not enough jobs, there's not enough jobs. We've got to remember that when COVID hit, that for every one job advertised, 13 people were looking. And it's not just about COVID. Before that, for every job advertised, there was about 8 people looking. And then on top of that, not all of us can work. That some of us may have illness or disability that makes it really hard or impossible. And then on top of that, there's even more of us that do all sorts of work, but it's unpaid. The hugely important work, the unpaid care work that people do, caring for elderly, for our kids, for community. And that's what people in our research said too, that the payment helped them do this work also. For example, I was able to help other people out, work for the collective good, do something for the collective good, being able to give a little to people in need rather than feeling helpless. And also, it helped people being able to do their childcare and looking after kids that they were wholly responsible for raising. And that's not a small thing, because unpaid care work is hugely valuable to society and the economy. It's been valued at about the equivalent of 50% of the Australian GDP. So much for lazy people. Other people say about basic income that we can't afford it. It's too expensive. But it's worth noting how quickly the government found money for this, and how the economy did not fall apart. Actually, it was seen as an important part of a stimulus to keep us all going. And basic income, different models cost different amounts. But we've got to remember about how expensive and inefficient the current system is. And also the cost of being cheap. The many years being wasted, dreams being wasted of people on social security, but not just the people themselves, but also their kids. We also asked people what was the negative about the basic income, and people overwhelmingly said nothing. Nothing followed by that it would end. And that's what happened. That the government reduced it dramatically and then finished it altogether earlier this year. And all of these people who had all of these things happen for them that was good were put back on payments that put many of them back under the poverty line. Did it have to be like this? Probably not. A recent YouGov survey asked Australians if they would support a universal basic income or a guaranteed livable wage, and 58% of us said yes. Only 19% opposed it. Perhaps that could mean that we could live in a society where you could get support and not be made feel bad about. Imagine when we live in a society where government doesn't use the lives of the disadvantaged as a political plaything, and that a basic income could just be that simple, basic payment, regular payment, based on need or a rightful share. Imagine that. Because if COVID's taught us anything, it is that at any point, any one of us could need a little bit of help, a little bit of support. We've got to do better. So where to from here? Well, the government introduced a basic income, and we let them take it away. Let's get it back. Thank you.